Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me today are Andy Zoll and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Andy, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. Also, a note to potential sponsors, you can reach out to Industrial Media President Tom Lynch. He'll help you get started on a program to support the Today in Manufacturing podcast and your marketing needs. Andy, thank you very much for filling in today.
Of course. Good to be here as always.
Yeah. How you been?
Good.
Yeah.
I always wonder if it's easier being shorter rather than having Jeff here, if that's like easier on you guys. Just having like a more normal heighted person over here.
I mean, only when he's like kind of yelling and it's coming from above,
yeah,
and you're just like, or like you really got to crane your neck quickly, where it's just like, what was that?
Easy.
Yeah. Hot take, Jeff. Hot take. We can't be as agreeable, though. That was like his main criticism of the last time someone filled in. He was just like, too nice.
Too nice.
Yeah.
All right. I'll try. I'll work on it.
Yeah. Right, Anna? No patty cake today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I dare you to disagree with me, Andy Zoll.
Right? I like it when we'll be forced to take the other side of a point that we don't agree with and then have to do it like old school debate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Point, counterpoint. Let's do it.
That's right. We'll give you the anti-jobs side of things.
I want it.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get started, we have a word from our sponsor, Weavix.
Hey, Sean, can you swing by my office after your shift, please?
10-4. Copy that.
Hey, we're back. And just a reminder that Weavix is the leader in frontline communication, offering push-to-talk multimedia capabilities and AI-powered language translation that empowers the frontline through a Walt Smart Radio. Now, Weavix is the first to introduce safety-compliant music, breaking the monotony of everyday work. Always ensure that you have the ear of the worker while enhancing worker safety and connectivity. With adaptive music controls compliant with OSHA regulations, geofencing for restricted areas, and customizable volume settings, safety is prioritized while boosting worker satisfaction. Use Weavix to drive frontline engagement and increase worker retention. Explore how Weavix is transforming frontline operations at Weavix.com. All right, our first story this week. Nickel-rich Indonesia pitches EV battery plant to Elon Musk. Indonesia is rich with natural resources, including the world's largest nickel reserves. Nickel is vital in the production of EV batteries and solar panels. So, when current third richest man alive, Elon Musk, was in town to launch a Starlink satellite internet, the government made advances. Musk owns EV car maker Tesla, which bought out SolarCity in 2016. So the man has some interest in nickel. Indonesia asked Musk to build an electric vehicle battery plant in the nickel-rich country. Musk said he'd consider it. Indonesia supplies 40% of the world's nickel. The figure could reach 75% by 2030. The government wants to make 6,600,000 EVs by 2030. The cars must be made of 60% domestic materials by 2027. So, Anna, is Indonesia the site of the next Tesla Gigafactory?
No. I don't think so.
Next story.
Maybe eventually, but I don't think maybe at this time. So obviously you can see the appeal for both parties here. Indonesia is obviously looking for investment opportunities. They're looking to grow their burgeoning EV market. They offered a variety of pitches to Elon Musk here: SpaceX launchpad, AI center, battery plant. So obviously they're keen to get Musk on the ground there with some money, I think. They just want to invest in their economy. And while it makes some sense on paper, I think, I don't know that it's really viable right now for Tesla, who is struggling with cash flow, as we know. Not to mention, Tesla's largest market in 2023 was by far the United States, which accounted for about half of Tesla sales. China's the second largest. Indonesia itself is not really on the map there. And Tesla's solar business is really a kind of a minuscule part of what it does. I mean, auto is really the thrust of that company. Tesla is also heavily dependent on qualifying for the tax credit here, which requires a certain percentage of battery components to come from the U.S., which is why its gigafactories here are a big asset. This would be more of a play for the China market, really. And Tesla just broke ground on a battery plant today.
Yeah, the Megapack factory.
Yeah. So, I mean, while there's a case to be made, obviously nickel rich is very compelling. I don't know if it's compelling enough at this time, not to mention, you know, a sizable investment here with Tesla's cash flow issues. We know that that they're cutting jobs right now. They're trying to streamline a little bit. I don't see it right now. You know, for Elon Musk to confirm that it was quite likely that they would mean that we would have to take him at his word, which I don't. So
yeah, no, that's he said he's considering it. To me, that read as it's a hard pass, but you know, thank you. Here's your Starlink.
Likely, maybe, like,
maybe,
yeah. We'll see. That's what I say to my kids when I don't, when it's actually a no, but I don't want to deal with it at that moment. We'll see. You don't go with
let me ask your father, because no, I mean that's like how we definitely punt. You know, like I can hear Carrie say it from the other room, like, well, let me ask your father. And I'm just like, oh, right. Can't wait for them to come over.
Oh, no.
So I can go right back and say, well, you know, I'll have to talk to your mom. And just go back and forth until they quit. So, Zal, for a man worth 3.92 trillion nickels, is this where he's looking to sink a new investment?
Yeah, I think probably no is the answer here. I mean, the way he put it was, he said, I think it's likely, and then I believe he said it's quite likely, which is just, in a world of hedging, that's like an all-time hedge. I think it's likely. So no, I don't think so, either from their perspective. And then from the government's perspective, it's just, it almost sounds like something where you've got like a pseudo-captive audience, so you're just trying to like shoot your shot. Like, how about this? Battery plant and also an AI center and a spaceport. You know, while you're here.
We'll give you a good deal on all three.
So, and it's hard to take any of this all that seriously when you kind of consider all of that. Now, obviously, he could use a supply of nickel, but I mean, as we've gone over here a little bit, you'd rather put those plants next to your auto plants than close to your raw supply. So, no, none of this seems very on the level to me at all.
Well, the one thing that stood out to me, though, is that Musk is never really one to shy away from a good deal, especially when it comes to, you know, where it looks like you can maybe get a lot of government incentives, you know, maybe operate on the cheap for a long time. I thought instead, like, maybe talk about starting with an EV play and then expand into megapacks, which is because he did just open that new megapack battery factory in China, but that was more for like utilities. And I don't know if those use as much nickel as the other ones do, but I thought like it could definitely make some sense there if you started with like an EV angle. But to me, what was more important when it comes to the Musk portfolio diversification was, did you guys catch when he was talking to people that were at that conference about the global water challenges?
Desalination?
Yes.
So he says that he thinks that desalination could solve water shortages. And so to me, I was just like, oh, he doesn't care about this nickel plant at all. He's teasing Salt X. Like, that's going to be the next big thing. Yeah.
I mean, maybe. That also seems like maybe the most if that was the most obvious hedge, that seems like, well, we'll just use the ocean water to solve the water crisis. Like,
I thought of that. Yeah. I mean, like when I was 7 or whatever. Like
right. Exactly.
Yeah, but this is a man who's just like, you know what, we're going to solve transportation by digging underground. The fact that he would start a company to, desalinate all salt water, like that doesn't sound like a stretch to me. And I see that as like, it could be the next.
Oh, he might start it.
Yeah.
Whether it would work is an entirely different issue.
Yeah, we need a good white paper to kick things off, so that way, like, 10 companies can form and then slowly whittle to the one that is like barely hanging on at the end.
It was nice back when we could just kind of parse through white papers with him.
Yeah.
It's not really the case anymore.
No. It's a much different environment. Doug is back. He says, "I'm back." It's good to see you, Doug.
Hey, Doug.
Thanks for joining us live. All right, our next most popular story this week. These edible 3D printed cookies are made of plastic waste. Researchers at Southern Illinois University Carbondale have come up with a way to make 3D printed food out of plastic waste. So, can these microbites, as they're called, solve global problems over waste plastic and food scarcity? I mean, it's possible. The process is fairly straightforward. The team mixes waste biomass and plastic, which is processed into a slurry. A special yeast converts the slurry to proteins that are then 3D printed into various forms, like cookies. Now, while that's a very oversimplified version of this proof of concept, the team 3D printed cookies and recently conducted a taste test with humans. Overall, the food actually received pretty high marks. They particularly liked the smell of things, which I don't know if that really says a lot about the taste. But hey, it's good. It smelled good. The cookies scored a 6.5 out of 9 on the hedonic scale, the most widely used measure of food acceptability. According to the team, that's the highest known score for cookies made of repurposed waste biomass and plastic. It's the highest one, though, the highest one. So, challenges still remain, like getting the public on board with eating waste-derived food. So, Anna, would you try a microbite?
Anything called a microbite, I would not try.
No?
Because the name itself just,
Okay.
But also no.
Also no?
Yeah.
Come on, this cookie, by eating this cookie, you're saving the world.
This is going to be no small challenge, the public acceptance campaign.
True.
I don't know. I see this as, I know they have very lofty ambitions here. I see it as more of a thought experiment than anything, trying to solve two of the biggest existential problems that we have facing humanity, right, at the same time. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, they are not the only entity to try this. A startup company called Behex was featured in Forbes last year with largely the same idea, leveraging this plastic-eating bacteria, among other things. But what I found interesting in the report about Behex is that the proof of concept was not just about plastic, and they were really reinforcing the fact that the idea was around how we repurpose things that we typically discard. So they gave the example of a beet and how the root is what's consumed, but the leaves and the stem are thrown away. And their interest, they said, were in the thrown away parts and dehydrating them, milling them into a type of biomass that they could use as feedstock for humans. And this, they say, is something that they could apply to astronaut food growing. And so when you look at that application in parallel, it becomes, I think, a little bit less far out and a little bit more reasonable seeming. The plastic is an example. And that's what is important, I think, is really more the technology. The plastic application just happens to get a lot of attention, in my opinion, and address that largest waste stream that we have on this planet. But I think we're really a long way away of the kind of public trust that it would require for people to actually consume plastic cookies. I know they're talking about like space applications right now, but generally speaking, the narrative right now around plastic is like, don't refill your water bottles because of microplastics, and how like they're finding microplastics in people's blood. And, so really it's around using less of it. I think it's a big leap to suggest that people will be like, oh, I should eat it. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, sure.
What I mean, it's already in there. You're already full of plastic anyways. Might as well eat some too.
I guess, and like just I don't know, like now we're gonna feed it to astronauts, like some of the most like important minds doing all this very important work. Like, sure, that seems like so. I don't know. I mean, I get the concept is cool. The repurposing concept is cool.
Yeah.
The plastic part, I am not there yet.
So it's more when we talk about proof of concept, like it's good in a pinch, right? Like when we're talking about astronauts that are heading out to Mars and maybe not coming back, people stranded on Arctic labs, submarines, people that are cut off from supply chains. That's where I see like real applicability there, where it's like, okay, we have no food anymore. What could we do? And like use something like that, and then maybe see how it evolves, right?
Right.
Because you're right. Like, I mean, this is the seed that they're planting in terms of what this could become. And it did, it came out as part of the NASA Deep Space Food Challenge, which is still really cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you're faced with starvation or a plastic cookie, you take the plastic cookie.
I guess it's just like that's very, very niche.
Yes.
I mean, like the other stuff is like I get it more like, hey, if we have to repurpose banana peels to make them into actual, you know what I mean, or like again stems, things that people are not eating at this time but are actually made out of like organic material.
Yeah.
Then I understand that a little bit more than like this very niche like someone is lost in space application.
Well,
I know it's NASA, so I get that, but
you get the angle because it's like what NASA wanted to do with it. But I don't know. I think it has real potential in terms of two really big problems that we have and a potential solution. Andy, when you looked at the story, was it, a non-starter for you as well?
No, I try it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
tried worse.
Well, there's plenty of chemicals in our food supply anyway. Might as well try this protein out of a yeast.
So we're just like
devoured slurry.
We're just like beyond repair. So we're just like, screw it.
It's so bad.
You're not talking about, forming your whole diet out of it.
Yeah.
Just trying it.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's,
right.
I'm not a doctor, but it probably won't kill you. So might as well take it. I'm curious what else. I'm curious what a 6.5 on that scale equates to as far as like conventional food. Like, what are we talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
And I didn't have time to look into it. But is that like shredded wheat or like,
yeah,
what are
or
we
like
talking
just
about?
Burger King fries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, not good, but fine.
Yeah.
Like serviceable.
I don't know if it's about consumer demand angle here as much as it is for me turning waste plastic into just about anything useful. I mean, even if no one eats them, we still have that much, I don't know how much, but that much not plastic around, which would otherwise stay in the environment pretty much indefinitely. So that's, and I almost felt like they didn't emphasize it enough. They're talking about the angles for deep space exploration and food insecurity, and it's, while those are noble and worthy challenges to attack, the idea that you could turn plastic not into just not plastic but into something useful is just mind-boggling to me. So I'm also just the microbite name. I don't know if they workshopped it or not, but it just reminded me of the 2-bite.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Oh, 2-bite brownies or
in the
whatever.
Woodman's Bakery. Yeah. So that's
2-bite
it didn't,
plastic cookies.
Yeah, it wasn't repulsed by the name or the texture of the cookie or anything. So yeah, give it a whirl.
Well, so I think they leaned into it a little bit because the initial funding, they got a $25,000 grant from the Deep Space Food Challenge. I wanted to shout out the team who's led by Assistant Professor Lahiru Jayakoti. And so I think that's why they talk about it in those deep space applications, and they're kind of trying to transition into looking to really industrialize and commercialize this. So the team does mention that they're looking to ramp up developments, hopefully with more government funding, which I could see becoming available, but also industrial partners that are looking to make like a fully integrated and automated system that could make these. If you were on either side of these, Anna, the government side, would you fund it for further development?
Mm-hmm.
And, if you had the automation chops, would you investigate possibly trying to commercialize this?
I don't know. It's just so dystopian, eating garbage.
But
cookies. Like it just
Garbage derived proteins.
Yeah.
I like I agree with you, Andy. I like the can we turn plastic into something that's biodegradable? Great. Then, yeah, let's scale that. Let's do that, Because if you can just layer these into the ground of whatever, planting, agriculture setting that you need, then perfect. I have so many questions, and I think that's hard for me to land anywhere. Do they have a flavor? Did the astronauts have access to cinnamon or whatever?
Yeah.
What are these? What does it taste like?
Some salt.
Well, so that's a big part of the idea too, is that especially given different cultures, different palates, stuff like that, you would inject nutrients into the paste before it's extruded. So if you wanted to add a touch of cinnamon and nutmeg, you could do that into the mix before it's extruded onto the hot plate.
So you have that stuff.
You do ideally have that stuff.
Okay.
I don't know. It's
put it in your spice rack or whatever.
Your space spice rack.
Yeah.
Your space rack. Yeah. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I mean, the machine, cool idea, great idea. The plastic part is tough for me.
Did BHEX say what their where they were on the 9-point hedonic scale?
You know what?
Widely accepted.
That wasn't even mentioned. So who knows what number they have?
Probably 4 or below.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I always like to see where this kind of, whether or not this just dies as a paper in a journal somewhere that we look back on. But I think that a lot more credit should be given to in this particular application, yeast, but there are also other applications out there where there are tiny microbes and bugs cleaning water, water that's otherwise could harm people. I think that we should look more into the using and commercializing microorganisms for applications like this and for cleaning water. I don't know. I think that a lot of times because it seems so far out there, people won't give it the time of day. When it has this is a real world application that is solving 2 real critical issues that we have on this planet.
I know. It's just it has been drilled into us how bad plastic is, these chemicals leaching into the ground because of plastic trash and microplastics in the blood and in the water and all this stuff. It is very hard to look at this and say, I completely trust that in 20 years they're not going to say, oops, actually that was packed full of carcinogens and we just didn't know right away.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think you trust that so much as you just accept that we're in this plastic problem world and need to move on or need to move forward with it. It's in
a way that I don't have to eat it. How about that?
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. Maybe we'll start giving it to animals. You don't eat the animals.
I don't.
So you'll be all right there.
Yeah, that's where it ends.
All right. Our next most popular story this week. Panera sued after teen's cardiac arrest linked to charged lemonade. On March 9th, 18-year-old Luke Adams drank a large mango yuzu citrus charged lemonade at a Pennsylvania Panera. Later that day, Adams went into cardiac arrest. After CPR and 2 electric shocks from an AED, Adams was hospitalized. He wound up in the ICU, intubated, and put on a ventilator. He then suffered 2 additional seizures at the hospital. Adams regained consciousness 2 days later, but he had to have a defibrillator implanted indefinitely to prevent another potential episode. A cardiology report identified, quote, heavy caffeine intake as the only potential trigger for Adams' cardiac arrest. The cardiac arrest, which is not a heart attack, I learned that during the story, was linked to ventricular fibrillation, a type of heart arrhythmia that can be triggered by caffeine. The teen is suing Panera, claiming defective design, manufacturing, and inadequate warnings. The lawsuit alleges that the Panera charged lemonade is defectively manufactured because the company's employees mix, quote, unsafe ingredients in-house. It also called the beverage a, quote, dangerous energy drink that is defective in design. According to the lawsuit, the beverage can include up to 390 milligrams of caffeine. The drink also contains ingredients that are classified as stimulants by the CDC. Nearly 2 months after Adams' cardiac arrest, the company announced it would discontinue the charged drinks. Anna, the story is pretty devastating, and we've seen similar ones when it comes to these hyper caffeinated beverages. You know, when you look at these stories, how much of it is on the designer or the manufacturer of the product, and how much of it is on, you know, personal responsibility?
Yeah, I think there's sort of a mixed bag here. Very devastating. You know, a person passed away after having this lemonade. I think two
people have died.
You know, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack here. Fortune covered the story of Panera discontinuing this lemonade with the headline, Panera is ditching its charged lemonade after 2 customers died, but Gen Z is still thirsting for dangerous snacks and drinks.
Huh. What do you mean by thirsting? Like, is that's like a Gen Z character quirk? Is that they're just into, like, you know, they're straight edge, but they'll go in for like 390 milligram lemonade?
Well, I don't know. So I was kind of trying to figure that out. So according to YouGov, 63% of Gen Z don't drink coffee at all.
Oh.
Which is almost double the percentage of millennials at 33%, which could mean that they're looking for a boost in another way. And while coffee is well established, right? Everyone knows what coffee is, what it does. I think you're paying for more caffeine if you want more caffeine. It's not like they're just like throwing in some extra shots and giving it to you for free.
Yeah, and it's
you have to ask for it.
Yeah, it's called like a red eye, a black eye. You know, it's like, what are you ordering? Nothing safe.
Nothing safe, right?
Yeah.
So I think that you can argue that this lemonade is maybe a little bit opaque when it comes to like are people quite understanding what they're getting into when they drink it. And, you know, people might not quite consider the level of caffeine that's in there when they see it, how that is relative to the size of their container. This is something that maybe you might look at it and see more of like it's more of a softball, like, you know, a little bit of caffeine in there, but not. Yeah,
when you hear charged, you might think like, oh yeah, a touch of caffeine, some taurine or whatever else is in there,
right?
That, you know.
Yeah, exactly, like drinking a soda or something. You know, and not like cramming for your midterm exams all night product.
Yeah.
Not to mention that lemonade is a drink that you can consume in larger quantities, I would say, than people. You know, nobody's punching down 10 coffees without having a really, really rough time. So I think you can argue that there were maybe some inadequate warnings here. And the idea that you could get free refills at one point was perhaps inadvisable. On the other hand, like this would not be a story if it were somebody drinking a lot of coffee and then finding out that they had a related heart issue because of that. Everybody already knows that about coffee. I think that's the distinction here. So there's definitely something to be said about like what was Panera's responsibility in making sure that this information was clear and available and the significant impacts of container size and refills and how much is actually in here, right? As for the defective design and defective manufacturing, like whether or not like you think it's advisable to drink this at certain quantities, like I get that, but does it violate the law and its ingredients? I'm not sure about that. You know, you'd have to prove that manufacturing on site was being done with inadequate training, or maybe producing a product that's over and above the caffeine levels that Panera has listed on it, which I don't know that is what happened. So I don't know that. I think those two components will be harder to prove and to win in terms of this lawsuit, but. Still, on like a final note, I would just like to say that, you know, some experts have said that up to 90% of Gen Zers have anxiety. And getting blasted on caffeine does not help that. So
definitely not going to help that.
Take some precautions, kids. Like, outside of this entire story, like, you know, caffeine should be approached with caution there.
Do you think part of the issue is that how it stands, you know, it's a couple of lemonade dispensing pieces of equipment right next to the fountain drinks. Do you think part of the problem is that like people look at it and just think it's inherently safe because it's lemonade, right? Like they don't necessarily.
I do think that.
You know, it's not a form factor. It's not like, you know, you pick up a Red Bull, you pick up an energy drink, and it has that unique form factor where you're just like, okay, this is different, rather than this is a big gulp full of lemonade.
Right, exactly. And like when you have a Red Bull in a can and it's 8 ounces, you think that is one serving. So I feel like that is an appropriate amount. Yeah. When you get like whatever container size you want at a refillable station, you're in charge of the serving size, and you may not be equipped with enough information to be doing that.
Yeah.
Especially in this case.
So is there no Gen Z equivalent to the Jesse Spano Saved by the Bell episode? Because that's what scared me straight on caffeine. Like, is there no equivalent for Gen Z where, like, there's this seminal episode of a show they watched where they're just like, no, like, it wouldn't be Hannah Montana. I don't even know what it would be. We're like, or like some sort of like a TikToker.
Just as they consume caffeine in different ways, I'm not sure they consume media the same way we do.
I know.
Either.
So yeah, it would have to be like some sort of viral, troubling TikTok video about like guerrilla marketing PSA. This is your brain on charged lemonade.
That it could be. I could not possibly think of anyone less qualified to address that than me.
No, clearly
Maybe
none of us.
I don't know.
No, clearly none of us. But I was just like, that was something that, like growing up, that was definitely okay. Hey, let's be careful with caffeine. I think Doug, who's watching us live, Andy, he'd like to know: is this going to turn into a TikTok challenge?
What, drinking the charged lemonade and trying not to develop an arrhythmia?
I don't. Yeah, how many can you drink?
I won't rule it out.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
certainly hope
not
not.
On Tide Pods for
I've heard. I've heard worse on those challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, the entire issue here is just how benign it seems getting a lemonade from a Panera. That's the whole issue. I'm not a lawyer or a judge or anything, but just to me as an outside observer looking at it, that's the entirety of this thing. Because even if you order a lemonade with like a shot of caffeine in it, you're expecting the same as any other energy drink, caffeinated beverage, whatever. This had, if the plaintiff's filing is correct, 390 milligrams.
Yeah.
That's 4 times what's in a standard 8-ounce cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I don't know. Your 8-ounce cup of coffee may vary. Mine's a little bigger, I think. But anyway, 4 times the standard serving of coffee according to the USDA, and then it's way more than 3 Red Bulls just in your cup.
Yeah.
Like, this is not... It's kind of a benign packaging of this crazy high caffeine level. That's the entire issue to me. Whether a judge or a jury will agree with that, I don't know, but that's what it amounts to me.
No, I agree. Like, the lines are blurring in terms of what's safe and what is legal. Like, before, when I wanted to buy like this level of caffeine, like you would have to buy what I would call the trucker caffeine pills behind the gas station, and that was just like, I bought them for when I would study in college, knowing that like, okay, they're clearly more dangerous because I need to get them behind a counter. But like, I mean, I just think that's the biggest part. I think a big overlooked part of this too is the sugar content that this thing has. Like, if you got the tall one, it has 124 grams of sugar in it. Like in one cup. Like Red Bull has 27, Monster has 24. The recommended sugar for a 16-year-old is 25 grams per day. And I read this study from Emory University that says the average teenager is consuming 119 grams of sugar every day. And it's just like, I don't know, it's something that we all need to do a better job in terms of looking at labels, especially things that are marketed towards children, more and more so, where I'm just like, I don't understand how one serving can be a quarter of the daily sugar, and like, that's still okay. But I get it. Got to make better choices. When you look at all the ingredients in what's going into this, Anna, that's why I talk about the defective design, because they know what's in it, and they know that multiple ingredients are stimulants, according to the CDC. And I think that's where they might want to run into a little bit of trouble, more so than the defective manufacturing.
That's true, but defective design, when it comes to a food product that would be viewed then as unhealthy, you open up a very slippery slope, I think, legal precedent.
Yeah.
Because, what's a donut? What's, what's the stuffed crust pizza with all the meat on top and the nitrates and the, it's just, is that all defective design,
Right. No, that's true. Is this from Doug or is this from producer Eric? Producer Eric says the original 23.5 ounce can of Four Loko contained 156 milligrams of caffeine.
Less than half.
Yeah.
How about a Jolt Cola?
Yeah. That is party in a can with 12% alcohol. Maybe that helped bring you down a little bit.
And those were banned, correct?
Yeah, they were banned. I don't know. It's also odd to me that it took Panera 2 months to pull this product, because to me it kind of seems like a no-brainer to just get it off the shelf immediately.
I mean, as of the writing of this article, it was still on their online menu.
Yeah, they said phased I think
Oh, it's phased. Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so they need to. They've got a lot of it that they got to move before
Yikes.
before it's fully banned. Just like it is completely banned once we're out of it, because we're not just going to go ditch us in a field.
Who needs a refill?
All right, our next most popular story: new Airbus aircraft is half plane, half helicopter, all fast. This one was an exciting headline. Last week, Airbus unveiled the Racer, a new demonstrator aircraft. The Racer is a $217 million successor to the X-3, which debuted back in 2010. The company says the Racer can cruise at 250 miles per hour. That's nearly 100 miles per hour faster than a traditional helicopter. Besides speed, the Racer is also designed for efficiency and mission performance. For example, it features a double-wing design that Airbus says is optimized for aerodynamics and weight reduction. It also has an asymmetrical tail boom for better hovering and integrated landing gear to reduce drag. Including the electric hybrid propulsion system, the savings add up to about 20% when it comes to fuel consumption. The Racer isn't just designed to go fast, but like any demonstrator, it's meant to prove out new operational capabilities, ideally at a lower cost. The tech could one day be used for emergency medical services where faster response times mean the difference between life and death, as well as search and rescue operations. And Andy, who knows, one day, maybe even commercial transportation. There you go. I mean, I know that we like to talk about how these, eVTOLs and things are too expensive to ever be used for commercial passenger transportation. But hey, it's going to be good for at least a couple 1%ers eventually.
Yeah, I can see them shaving a couple minutes off their commute with one of these.
Yeah.
No, the most important thing that I took out of this was the medical emergency angle, because if ever you see those Flight for Life helicopters, everyone's acutely aware that time is a factor there.
Yeah.
So this is it took me way too long to calculate this. It turns out 100 out of 150, that's 2/3. So it's 66% faster. I need a calculator to do it. That's why I do words. So if this is deployed on a wide scale, I mean, this will undoubtedly save lives. I mean, that's a significant time savings when you're trying to get people from the scene of an accident or whatever to a hospital where there's actual equipment there to help them.
Well, and I feel like the Flight for Life aircraft, which I mean, they maybe have changed over the years, but like anytime I see them, I'm like, that seems like it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
But maybe I've just seen Flight for Life in too many rural communities. Anna, were you inspired at all by the design and some of the things that they're adding in terms of technology, or is this do you see it more as wasteful spending?
No, I don't see it as wasteful spending. I think there's some exciting applications here, as Andy mentioned, and then the benefits that we get when the military serves as a test bed for fuel saving techniques, for example, I think always comes back to help the commercial market in the end. You talk about this double wing design for optimized aerodynamics and weight reduction, integrated landing gear for reducing drag, electric hybrid system for single engine operation while cruising, altogether giving you, as you mentioned, that 20% savings in fuel consumption. We talk a lot about the emissions coming from aerospace and how sustainable aviation fuel is a bit pricey and hard to come by. So I love to see the design changes that can kind of, really in the favor of like aerodynamics and trying to maybe offset the need a little bit for changing fuel types. It makes these planes need less to begin with. And I think that helps solve that problem a little bit. Everybody kind of coming closer to the middle on that. Because pairing something like SAF with an aircraft that's designed for sustainability is a much more realistic proposal, probably.
Yeah, than retrofitting.
Yeah. And it takes away some of those objections of like, hey, we can't use SAF because it's too expensive, therefore we can do nothing more than we're already doing. The design side of it, I think, is really interesting in attacking that problem from both sides. So, a lot of times it starts in the military and then finds its way elsewhere. It kind of like, I don't know how I would say it exactly, maybe a thing leading to, say, another thing.
Maybe.
Yeah.
By saying that, you took someone else's thing.
Who is on a fishing boat right now.
Yeah,
so
he's chilling.
Get over that.
We've seen a couple of photos of him like really putting that Today in Manufacturing koozie to task. So He's doing okay.
He's doing fine.
It's good to,
I can borrow his catchphrase for one day.
Relax, Jeff. Have a good time. This story for me was about the demonstrator aircraft, right? Like, for reasons that I love all kinds of stories like this, I love demonstrator aircraft because it's the one time when, like, just because you can means that you should. Yeah. They are by design like these money pits of R&D. Basically the culmination of like the spaghetti that's stuck to the wall. Yeah. And it's not just a way for Airbus to flex, but it also opens a window for us to see what the future of aviation will look like.
For sure.
I don't know. It's this bridge between what's happening on the R&D level and, like you said, things that we're going to see in commercial aerospace applications where they can test and validate these emerging technologies and see what works. And I know that I reiterated a lot, but like R&D is like the lifeblood for your company in terms of making sure that you're not just keeping pace, but what's maybe keeping you out ahead of the competition. And, we do hear, like we heard last week, of Airbus being modest, but I mean, there's a lot of ground to maybe go leaps and bounds ahead of, let's say, some competitors right now. And I don't know, when I see some of the tech that goes into demonstrator aircraft like this, I get encouraged. Whereas I know that some people look at that $217 million price tag and they're just like, well, what else could we have done with that? And I think you can't focus on that.
No, in the grand scheme for Airbus, that's the cost of doing business. I know it's a ton of money, but it's also how it has to be done.
Yeah. All right. Our next most popular story this week. Alabama Mercedes employees overwhelmingly vote against joining the union. On Friday, workers at a pair of Mercedes-Benz factories in Alabama voted against joining the United Auto Workers. The final tally showed 2,045 workers saying yay and 2,642 saying nay. About 56% voted against the union, which is a landslide. Nearly 93% of workers eligible to vote cast ballots. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, who is against the union, said auto manufacturing is one of the state's crown jewel industries, and Alabama is committed to keeping it that way. She said Alabama is, and I like this one, not the sweet home to the UAW. That one was nice. A little touch on that one. Part of the issue were big promises workers weren't sure the UAW could back up. Melissa Howell, for example, who opposed the union, said the UAW was making lofty promises it couldn't put in writing, like the $40 per hour, pensions, and better benefits. The loss is a knock to the UAW's effort to organize some 150,000 workers at non-union auto factories, largely in the South. In defeat, UAW President Shawn Fain told workers the results were not what he had hoped for. He said sometimes Goliath wins the battle, but ultimately David will win the war. Andy, we shall see, but do you think David has a chance at winning this war in the South?
Only if he articulates what the collective bargaining process is better to the people that are quoted in this story.
Yeah.
No, the UAW came into this with a lot of bluster. They just won some significant concessions in a very favorable labor environment for them with the big three at those plants. And so rightly, because they want to drum up interest among that labor force, they're like, we're going to go into these plants in the South that have never been unionized, and we are going to win approval and blah, 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 blah. But it was never going to be that simple. These plants have been there, some of them for 40 years. They've never been unionized, and there's a reason for that. You're talking about overhauling how their plants have been operated and governed for decades, and there's plenty of internal opposition from both the company and from local elected officials. So there's a lot of momentum to overcome, even though they came in with some momentum on their side. And we've talked at length about the labor market in this country and how it's given rise to more union activism. So whether David will triumph, it kind of remains, all they can do now is go to the next one. They won the first one, obviously, which is a huge step for them.
Yeah.
VW in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
This one did not go their way, and they're vowing to again try again at this plant. But one thing I did wonder was they started at the two German companies plants, which are obviously used to dealing with unions in their native countries. And I wonder if things were obviously contentious with these two, you kind of wonder where that goes from here as they go into other plants. Not just the Japanese companies who have their own unions in their home countries, but particularly Tesla, which has just been openly hostile to this from the jump. So it's going to be a battle, and I don't think anyone should have thought it would have been anything but that.
Well, so that was one thing that was surprising to me too. Do you think that the UAW and Fain maybe started believing their own hype a little bit too much? Just because I was surprised by the kind of defeatist attitude after this one, where it was, they could have seen it as like encouraging, like we didn't win, but we saw this, we were this close, which, and instead they're just like, well, we live to fight another day.
Yeah, it's tough when you lose these things, but I know, landslide is a relative term, but what, 44%?
Yeah.
That's a starting point. That's better than, getting 30 or whatever. That's a legitimate spot to start from. But as far as, coming a little too hot, I feel like that might be his style, given how he's operated at the UAW thus far.
Yeah. Anna, did you also find it encouraging that like nearly 93% of workers eligible to vote cast ballots? So, to me, it made me really feel like this was the will of the majority.
Yeah, and obviously just from a perspective of being an American and people taking a part in the process of voting, I think that was good.
Yeah.
I want to back up a little bit too. I think Andy was kind of getting at this too. I think the superlatives in the coverage of this were a little bit hot. Overwhelming, landslide.
Well, I think that's okay. So what did you tell me again? Like the stat.
I was told 55% is a landslide in political coverage a long time ago.
Yeah.
Whether that's changed since then, I couldn't tell you. Whether it's fair, entirely up for debate.
Yeah.
But I think in any kind of contentious issue where you kind of expect things to be 50-50, I think that's kind of the line conventional wisdom, whatever that means, has set. So certainly I think there's room to disagree about whether this should have been considered a landslide or not, because I'm of the opinion as well that that's a starting point, is 44% for a union trying to get organized for the first time.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that that's not so many minds to change, and it's not uncommon for these plants to put these up for votes every few years, even. So I don't know. I think. To me, it wasn't exactly emphatic, 65-70%. That's a get out of here vote.
Yeah.
But almost half and half. I don't know.
It was real close. And not just half and half. We're talking about what? We're talking less than 600 workers.
Right.
So, I can understand how 55% is a landslide when you have millions of people voting, But I don't know. I kind of do agree with you when people were saying it was overwhelming and a landslide. It's like, I don't know. They kind of did better than I thought they were going to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm on board with that characterization. And I think, too, it matters because if you look at the history of UAW votes that have taken place in southern car factories, the percentage voting against seems to be getting slimmer over time in some of the other plants. And, of course, we know about Chattanooga, but they held 2 votes prior to this in recent years, one in 2014-15 and one in 2019, and they got progressively closer each time. And their last vote was about the same as this one was, 50-something% no. And then, 4 years later, 73% voted in favor of that union. That's a big shift, but it was doable for them in just a couple of years. It's not like they were starting with 30% favorability for that. They were already halfway there. So if you look at it in that way, and I think you can, or if you look at, say, for example, too, there's a Nissan plant in Smyrna, Tennessee. There have been 3 votes also over the last few decades. Each time it shaves a few points off of the opposition. So all you need is a few points, in this case. So will the same thing happen here in Mercedes, where the union, maybe the union still sees this as a pretty ripe opportunity to push for a new vote in a few years? I don't know. I think they will.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think it's interesting, too, to see this in the context of, there's discussion around, was there intimidation taking place at the Mercedes plant? You mentioned, what I believe, as I think you do, that it was strategic that the UAW started with German plants. VW was said to have been very hands-off in handling what was happening internally. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. Obviously, legally, they're supposed to be hands-off.
And that's kind of how they operated, I think, in those earlier 2 votes as well. There was significant opposition from policymakers all 3 times, but I think the company was like, however, the will of the voters, all that sort of thing, or the will of the workers, rather, all that sort of thing.
Yes, that's the coverage I saw as well. I think that I don't know if Mercedes truly had employed anti-union messaging efforts. That's what's being said. But, you mentioned Governor Kay Ivey. She has been relentless in her very clear opinion that the union was challenging the economic model of the South. She really tried to get at, this is our way, and they're coming in. She called them a looming threat, an out-of-state interest group. Certainly very transparent, and I would say well chosen and evocative language that was perhaps influential messaging to those workers. And I don't think that there was as much of that in the Tennessee vote for VW, both from the company, obviously, but then also their governor, who kind of at the last minute was like, I'm opposed to this. I've always been opposed to it. Signed like a letter that all the governors signed. Yeah. But much less consistently actively vocal in trying to frame this narrative that the UAW is an outsider that is coming into our territory and trying to change what we do. Yeah. So I do think there were other factors here that made it a little bit harder to get that win, but I don't think that win is out of the question for the future.
Were you surprised by Fain's sort of defeatist attitude afterwards?
I think that, obviously it's probably just like it's a concession speech almost, which is very exhausting.
Yeah, just licking your wounds.
Yeah, but, they said that they're going to, look into, does something need to be challenged? Was there, too much influence from the plant? Yeah. They're looking into that. And I do think, maybe they see this as, this is where we start, and we're going to move forward from here and try to do it again.
I've heard just anecdotally that, even if you're facing long odds in a vote, you got to just keep moving you're going to win because there's no other way to go about it. So yeah. I'm sure it was discouraged.
To your point, Anna, I think you have the ears of a lot more workers that would never have listened to pro-union sentiment, right? And I think that's going to be I'm interested to see how the next vote goes, because I understand how there is a natural tendency to just say no to change. Like, things have always worked the way worked well for me. I don't need anyone rocking the boat. But, you have a vote. It's a little close. You have the sort of educational material out there where you can kind of read up a little bit more about what, they've been able to accomplish in other areas. And, maybe it starts looking a little bit better. Maybe you feel a little bit more comfortable with the yay votes the next time it comes around. Whereas I think sometimes these sort of union conversations are just, it's talking politics in the break room, where it's just nope, no thank you. I'm going to have my sandwich and I'm going back to work.
Right.
It'll also be, I'm kind of curious to see what the UAW's next target is going to be. It looks like it's going to be that Hyundai plant in Alabama. Apparently 30% of workers have already signed union cards. So on to the next, I guess, and let's see what happens. All right. Well, before we jump into, in case you missed it, we have another word from our sponsor, Weavix.
Sean, can you swing by my office after your shift, please?
10-4, copy that.
And we are back. It's good to see you again. Just a reminder that Weavix is the first to introduce safety-compliant music, breaking the monotony of everyday work. Always ensure you have the ear of the worker while enhancing worker safety and connectivity. With adaptive music controls compliant with OSHA regulations, geofencing for restricted areas, and customizable volume settings, safety is prioritized while boosting worker satisfaction. So use Weavix to drive frontline engagement and increase worker retention. Explore how Weavix is transforming frontline operations today, right now, at Weavix.com. Let's move on to In Case You Missed It. The stories maybe not as popular on the website, but still could make an impact on the industry going forward. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We'll follow it. We'll follow the thread, put a pin in it. Andy, what do you have for us this week?
My In Case You Missed It this week is about a company called Harbinger, which is a Southern California company that makes medium-duty electric commercial trucks. It announced that it has secured binding pre-orders for about 4,000 of its vehicles from some major companies, namely Thor, which I learned is the world's largest maker of RVs, and Bimbo, which owns bakery brands like Sara Lee and Entenmann's. The company says those pre-orders are valued at around $400 million, which is a good chunk, even though, as we've seen over and over and over again, it's tough to start a vehicle company.
Yep.
I thought the more important lesson here is that this is kind of another step forward for getting electric vehicles into the hands of these kind of local delivery operations, particularly this is a bakery company, huge bakery company. But companies that may have like a hub in an urban area and then send these products all throughout that corridor. It's more conducive to electric charging than probably passenger, but especially longer haul trucking. And even in, especially in these more populated areas, it's a way to get those emissions that would be tied to gas or diesel, eliminate those, and particularly to eliminate their tailpipe emissions altogether. So this is a sector that's particularly important to target in the very, very gradual shift to electric vehicles. So I just thought it was a good step in that direction.
Yeah. What I liked about this story was the business model, right? So it's a medium-duty stripped chassis. So basically, they sell you the base, and then it's upfitted into what you need.
Which is standard practice. Ford does that, and other companies do that too.
Yeah, and it's, you're right. Like, man, we're talking about things that reading the label. Oh, man, problems with Entenmann's, my goodness. But I don't know. It was a lot of it came out of the show. It's the ACT show that's happening right now, and there have been a lot of really cool new products that have been debuted there. I was surprised by how they not only had the 400 million in pre-orders, but they also had another 13 million in additional Series A funding. So there's been a little bit of support there. Anna, when you look at the story, what are some of the things that jump out to you?
Yeah, same. I agree. It's a great application for, for these local delivery trucks to be using electric. They can just, everybody team up and juice at the end of the day, and they don't have to worry about finding a charging station. You just have a hub and you're good to go. This RV thing, explain this to me. So these are going to be electric RVs, or is this like transporting supplies to this manufacturer? Do we know?
That was not in the story. Do you have an answer ready?
No, I do not. No, it wasn't known how they were going to use them.
Okay.
Or if these would be because I could understand it for the RV market, because RVs are things that traditionally will go, maybe say 400 miles or less, and kind of park and charge for a long time, kind of be there for a while. So It does make sense to me if these were RVs, but it would also make sense to me if it was just used in their supplier network.
Right, yeah. It'd be, the electric RV thing is also really, really exciting to me, the idea of that, just because those are just very, very inefficient.
Yeah, the new ones get 7 miles to gallon or something just ridiculous.
I know, but I also don't begrudge anyone their perfect retirement. You know what I mean? So it would be nice to pair those things together in a better way.
Oh yeah, no, it's I had lunch with my son yesterday at a diner at noon, in DeForest, and there were 2 RVs parked there. It's a common spot for people to kind of stop and on their way somewhere else, and it's fun to get a glimpse into that RV life. Just like, you know what?
They're heading somewhere interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Anywhere they want.
Yep. One day, in the event that both myself and my partner make it to retirement, here we go.
Why you gotta say that, David?
Well, because I'm not doing it by myself.
Got to hedge your bets.
Yeah, I mean, it's the typical hedge. One thing that was also cool is what this company's management team is made up of. They have experience from Tesla, Rivian, Ford, Anduril, SpaceX, Toyota, Honda. I mean, basically everyone, even Mack trucks. So quite the brain trust. It'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Yeah.
Anna, what's your in case you missed it this week?
I selected a story only because of it outraged me, and I'm sure others. So if you did miss it, now you can be outraged as well. The title is Boeing Shareholders Approve CEO's $32.8 million compensation. That's Boeing CEO. So last week, shareholders approved David Calhoun's $32.8 million compensation plan. Obviously, we haven't missed the issues at Boeing, so I won't bore you with that. But Calhoun, who has agreed to step down at the end of the year, so the company is finishing a 90-day plan for fixing its manufacturing problems. It's also working through a Spirit Aerosystems acquisition. That's what it's working on right now. What it's not working on is not selling planes. Is not doing that right now.
They had 7 last month, right? Or last quarter?
Yeah,
Something like that.
single-digit sales last month. So the shareholder meeting was described as heavily scripted. They made it sound like the questions were
Organic?
no.
Okay.
That the questions were.
What's the opposite of that?
Yeah, exactly that they were canned, basically.
They were all plants.
Seed questions. Yeah, and then they noted that the executive compensation, mostly stock, was voted on by a 64 to 36% margin. The company has lost more than $23 billion since Calhoun took over as CEO in 2020. So industry reports, including one in the Financial Times, have been talking about the symbolism of this level of protest vote, this 36%, saying that the votes at the company's meeting marked one of the biggest revolts this year against the CEO of a company in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, adding that pushback at this scale on a corporate vote is a sign of significant frustration from shareholders, really.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Just to me, it was just like, just shameful that this was even taking place, just above and beyond the like corporate grift that you get with any like insane executive comp package. Like this was just, I couldn't even believe it.
Yeah.
You know, I was like speechless reading the story that this was even taking place. And, you know, I think the message is that at a certain point in your career, your tenure at a company can completely bomb and you'll still be rewarded handsomely. And that's an outrage, and it should be.
Well, couple of things. I just like to imagine some of these seed questions being like, are you sure you don't think you should get 40 million?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you sure? Yeah. No, for me, but if you remember, it was on the podcast when it was mentioned that Calhoun was stepping down, but essentially going to be the fall guy for the rest of the year. I kind of questioned it. I said, I'm curious to see how big that golden parachute is. And frankly, this is small to me, just in terms of like everything they are piling on him in terms of his responsibility and his regime, and they're going to use to, sunset. That's kind of small to me.
You don't think that he could retire handsomely on $32.8 million when Boeing's stock is in the toilet now?
No, I absolutely no. It's an egregious amount. But I'm just saying, like, in terms of what he was willing to take on, and just I was surprised.
I get it that he started after the crashes, the Max stuff, as CEO, but he did not start at Boeing. He was there. He's been at Boeing for a time.
Yeah.
And you don't think that somebody has a responsibility to I don't know, ensure a productive company here? I mean, this is not working. So to see somebody walk away and think that they need to get $30 million because of what they've done the last 4 years.
Yeah. No, don't mistake what I'm saying with me not thinking it's egregious, because I do think the amount is egregious, but
you just thought it would be more egregious.
I just thought it was going to be more egregious given the whole history of American capitalism. Just like, oh, okay, I'm going to be the fall guy, lump all of our manufacturing problems, all of our systemic management and operational problems onto me.
Yeah.
Give me this, and then I'll take it all with me, and you can start a new Gen 1. That's what I completely agree with you. Like, in terms of his legacy and what it will be at Boeing and what some of the workers say about his tenure, what outsiders say about his tenure, yeah, of course. Like, none of that is earned. That is not an earned payout. But I don't know, Andy.
If
This
nothing
is
else,
the world we live in. Yeah.
But not surprising.
if
Not earned,
nothing
but not
else,
surprising.
this is reflective of that the problems at Boeing go much, much deeper than him.
Yeah.
That's so true. I mean, the board is implicated here.
Yeah,
heavily.
and given the dollars and the company in question, like, of course, it's easy for your eyes to pop out of your head looking at this number. But I mean, and I get that there was a significant protest vote to this, but it was still 2/3 approved.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the people doing the voting, watching their stock plummet. So who am I to say it's an outrage? If they're not outraged, who's going to be?
Yeah.
I can still be outraged. We are
oh,
allowed
for sure.
to. Yeah.
Oh, this is America for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
But
gross.
like, the Jeffism, just like, hey, it's what the going rate is. They approved it. Let him have his money.
I know, but I chose this story precisely because Jeff was not here, so I didn't have to hear about it.
It's it would be great. Like, I assume that one day when I retire with considerable wealth, and I'm sitting next to this man on some sort of like exclusive resort. Yeah. And I'm just talking to him, and I'm just like, he's like, "What'd you do?" And I'm just like, "Oh, I did a couple of things, a few things cashed in, and it really worked out nice."
Podcast
for me.
empire.
Yeah, the podcast empire really took off. And then he'll just reply like, "Oh, I ran Boeing into the ground."
Yep.
Yeah. No, and then we'll like share margaritas.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's it, maybe I'll like go easy on the salt.
You'll
because
be
I'll be of a
older
certain
then. Yeah.
age. Yeah, I'll have more responsible decision making. But no, it's just it's unfortunately not surprising, and I can't wait to see the next golden parachute.
I can.
All right, in case you missed it, I picked an article. It was an interview, a new way to manufacture sustainable plastic. They say it's similar to magnifying glass, or using a magnifying glass to burn a patch of grass. This is an interview that Nolan Beilstein had with Light Manufacturing CEO Carl Van Creese. Light Manufacturing is a solar technology company that promotes solar thermal plastic molding systems as a new way to make sustainable plastic components. Light Manufacturing uses these giant panels that reflect sun rays onto a rotating mold to create large plastic items. So think kayaks and water barrels. While rotomolding is common for large plastic products, Van Creese says Light Manufacturing makes the process cheaper and cleaner. And, we got a lot of space out there to do it. So solar rotational molding, also known as SRM, these systems use arrays of sun tracking mirrors called heliostats that concentrate thousands of watts of heat onto the mold, heating it quickly. Product costs are reduced by 15 to 30%, a big savings in these commodity product markets. He says it's scalable. Roughly 49% of the Earth's land has sufficient sun for this solar molding process, and their largest system at the moment can rotomold tanks up to 2,000 gallons. They're making boats that are up to 11 feet long, and they're also making other products like furniture, toys, road barriers, and playground equipment. Most large plastic products are rotomolded. These guys just figured out a process that's cheaper and cleaner, according to the company. Molded for commercial customers, they've been working with commercial customers since 2014. They've even supplied the U.S. military. So I chose this story just because, to me, this seemed like something that would typically come out of a university or academic application. A sort of a proof of concept that we're just like, yeah, but let's see it work. And it's scalable, and it's working, and they're actually making products that they're selling. So I was very encouraged by this. And it seems pretty incredible. It seems like the plot of like a bad movie, and they've somehow used it to make holding tanks and boats. What'd you think of this story, Zoe?
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of complex engineering going on here, but also it's just mirrors and the sun.
Yeah.
Like it seems like so simple on its face.
Like a 1980s movie.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
So, I mean, you wonder what else we're missing just by like
It
not
is
using this stuff that's been around for
Yeah.
hundreds of years.
Yeah, and he's just like, it's like, is it scalable? Well, about half of the land here, we got nothing going on there, so we can put mirrors and molds there too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't really solve our plastic problem.
I was going to say I wasn't going to bring the room down, but the plastics manufacturing process is sustainable.
Yes, I agree.
Plastic is not sustainable.
The headline is a bit misleading, I would say. It's not sustainable plastic. It's sustainable manufacturing.
Sustainable manufacturing. However, once these tanks are done being used and re-shred them down and cover them in yeast and make them into cookies,
There
that
we
will
go.
have no long-term effects on us.
There we
Is that
go.
the cradle to grave on this?
Yes.
Is cookies?
The circular economy. So, Anna, even though we only got about a 50% sustainability on this one, it's encouraging that, I mean, one of the biggest complaints about manufacturing are the emissions and the power that go into it. So this is this is a pretty novel technology.
Don't get me wrong. I am not bagging on this at all. I think solar power rules, and I think it is not utilized to its. I mean, we could power a lot of manufacturing processes if people would just get on board with that. But this takes some of the, I think it takes some of the guts out of the middle, and it's just really more direct and efficient way of using it.
Yeah.
Than putting panels on your roof and dealing with all the electrical and all that stuff. So, but this is I think it's very cool, and I don't know exactly how you scale it in terms of mass production of certain items or
More mirrors in the desert.
just more mirrors in the desert. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's make kayaks in the desert.
Well, I
a
think
ton of 'em.
you could make it more sustainable by getting it closer. So you just make these kayak solar manufacturing sites next to larger bodies of water. Right?
On-demand kayaks.
On-demand kayaks.
I kind of like that, actually.
Yeah. And the only thing for me that I didn't care for was I know the toys and the playground equipment that they're making with this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just on the, everyone's cleaning out the garage right now. And it's all the stuff that's been it's sun baked and faded.
Mm-hmm.
And it's covered in grass and anthills. And it's all on the side of the road
Like
right
the big
now.
turtles sandbox.
Yeah. The huge turtle
Everyone's
sandbox.
got one. They give you one.
That
Yeah.
plastic slide that's too big for an infant but not big enough for a toddler to care. But everyone gets one with a new baby, and it's just well, I can't wait to throw this in a landfill. But I love kayaking, so hey, that's great. That's great.
I'm curious if there's any quality control challenges with this being outdoors.
Yeah.
With it being hot and as it's coming out, are there bugs getting in there or birds? I don't know
Probably some
how they deal with that.
some production hiccups if it rains.
Yeah, what happens
Yeah.
if they're in the middle of a manufacturing process and the sun goes away, or there's it rains, cloud cover. Still, this is something that I cannot believe it's already at this level in terms of commercialization. All right, well, let's jump into our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Andy, what's your final thought this week?
I wanted to give a tip of the cap to my guy Rob at the Cordial Bar in Madison. Producer Eric and I were out at a park when we had some severe weather roll in, and by severe I mean the sirens and the phone going off and all that good stuff. And I was about a half an hour away from my house, and I did not want to race a tornado down the freeway.
You can't race a tornado. You can't outrun.
So I figured what they would want me to do was go to the Cordial Bar. So we did, and
Yeah.
Rob kept us company. So
Okay.
so big ups to him. Hopefully we won't see him again soon, but if circumstances warrant, we'll be back. That's where you should go.
Okay.
He kept you safe.
That's right.
Was it just the three of you?
One other weird guy showed up.
Showed up in the middle.
Yeah.
Didn't even know that it was a bar.
He just showed
there was
up with
weather?
a to-go thing of, I think, places from the Mexican place next door, and just talked a lot, which is good because I was just texting and my wife, making sure everyone was alive.
Yeah, is the house still standing?
Yeah.
It's amazing how that text chain just goes around, just still good? Yes,
Yeah.
kinda.
Yeah.
Anna, what's your final thought this week?
I just want to say that if you're ever in a situation where you need to call an after-hours garage door repair service and they ask you if you are prepared to pay $200 for the person to come out, you are. You take that. That is a good deal. and you just say yes to that, and then you get to go to sleep at 10:30 versus versus being up all night. I think, I don't know. But our garage door ran into some trouble yesterday, and my very typically handy husband got in a bit out of his depth on that, trying to take the garage door apart, and then I think he would have been up all night had I not intervened. But
by nature, like, you look at a garage door and it seems there are so few components. You figure it's, it's like, okay, it's the rail, it's the spring, it's the electronics. But yeah, no, way more complicated.
Yeah, and it's also very heavy and like above you at times. And I just, there was a lot of things about it that I was like, no, we should not be doing this.
Right?
Like,
we write too much about safety for me not to see all of these red flags.
I know, like, please stop. So anyway, that fee, well worth your.
I'm very much pro team call a guy
I
on pretty much everything. Like, even if I know a little bit, that guy knows way more than me.
I know zero. I'm call a guy also, but my husband is like only like 5% of the time call. He's like electrical work team call a guy, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'm team call a guy once whatever I'm trying scares me. Mm-hmm. So it's like, let's try it until I see real danger, and then it's like, no. You know, like when I jokingly tell my wife, like, all right, just put 911 on the phone, but don't hit send, and then we'll give it a shot. That's when I'm like, oh, you know what?
Yeah, I should. Yeah, at the point where he was like holding the top panel of the garage door, and I could tell it was heavy, and he was just standing there, and he goes, I don't know what to do next. And then I was like, I think this is.
I have an idea.
We're
gonna call it now, please. Oh, all right. It's all better.
It's all right. Hashtag call a guy.
Call a guy.
My final thought this week is that we are rolling into a holiday weekend. And I understand it's one of those holiday weekends where everyone tries to get everything out of every minute of every day. And like, people are already leaving now to get the weekend started so that way they can maximize their time. But it's okay to just like take a step back and relax and use the weekend to, let's say recombobulate. Like, we all work stressful jobs and have stressful lives. And sometimes I think when we over-plan vacations or getaways that it winds up sometimes just adding to the stress level, not actually like helping bring it down at all. So, maybe take some time for yourself this weekend.
For sure, yeah.
I'm getting better at that. Yeah. Leaving some dead air in the itinerary.
Yeah. Well, it's so for me, it was when people started saying like, did you like put in that extra day, the buffer day to like the vacation from the vacation?
Oh, you have to.
And
that's key.
But like for me, I'm just like, well, what if I just scale back that vacation a little bit? So that way I'm not trying to like, pile so much stuff in there. And while this may seem laughable to people in my life that I'm capable of doing that, I'm working on it. It's like a baby step process. We're getting there. Hopefully it'll be a nice chill weekend though.
Yeah.
So, all right. Everyone stay safe and enjoy it. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review. You can email any of us, Jeff, David, Anna, Andy at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. All right, for Andy Zoll and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.